And hold on, I have to do something apparently. One of the founders of Messy Conversations, and we're really glad to have you here today for this messy conversation on strengthening campus communities through the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation framework, which is, I guess, not this past summer, but the summer of 2023, Antioch University was one of a few dozen institutions that was chosen to host a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation campus center. And so we want to learn more about that. And we're lucky to have a number of members of the TRHT Advisory Board with us. And I'm going to hand it off to two of them to get us started. And that is our own Pia Alexander and Stephanie Helms Pickett. So take it away.
Thank you so much, David, and good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. On behalf of the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center Advisory Board, we use the acronym TRHT, so you may hear that a lot this evening. We would just like to thank the Planning Committee for Messy Conversations for the opportunity to talk to you about this important work that is happening within the Antioch University framework. We believe that it aligns very well with our mission and our values, and we look forward to our conversation this evening. So, we are going to take an opportunity to introduce ourselves in terms of the advisory committee. And I will go through having everyone introduce themselves in the order on the screen. So again, Stephanie Helms Pickett. I serve as the Vice Chancellor for Equity, Belonging, and Culture. And I'm a member of the TRHT Advisory Committee, and I will popcorn it over to Malakia.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, so my name is Malakia Contrice. I am a doctoral candidate in the Ed.D. program and a member of the TRHT Advisory Board, as well as the Anti-Racism Task Force for the university at large. And by day, I am I work in death penalty appellate work. And so all of my clients have been sentenced to death, and I work against that sentence. My doctoral research is in the application of truth, racial healing, and transformation into educational spaces and teacher education. And I come to the board by way of having petitioned to apply to become a center a few years ago, and that finally coming into fruition. And from there, I will popcorn it over to my colleague, Shantae.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shantae Walker. I am a master's student in the Individualized Master's Program. I'm actually conducting research on TRHT, specifically looking at dance movement therapy utilized in the racial healing circles. And with that, I will ping it over to Kat Bell.
Hi, I'm Kat Bell. I am the University Director of Writing Support, and I have been honored enough to serve with this wonderful group of humans this year and last year in starting to bring the TRHT to Antioch, largely thanks to the work that Mali and the EDD have been doing around TRHT frameworks, and super excited to hear from both Shantae and Mali about the way that this intersects with their work at Antioch as scholars, but also how it advances Antioch's own mission and vision. And I'm going to go ahead and send this over to the soon-to-be Dr. Alexander.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Pia Alexander. I'm teaching faculty at Antioch, New England in the Couple and Family Therapy program. I'm also completing doctoral candidate And I serve as the faculty co-chair for the Anti-Racism Task Force at the university. And I'm really, really honored to also be a part of the TRHT Advisory Committee and to have attended the Institute this past summer. Nice to see everyone. I will send it over to Dr. Helms-Pickett.
Hi, everyone. I had the opportunity to meet you when we joined in, but excited to be here. I will popcorn it over to LaKoya.
Hello, I am LaKoya, and I am with primarily with UGS and the Writing Center out of Los Angeles. And I am, I believe, the newest member to the advisory committee, and looking forward to being a part of getting the TRHT some more attention and support throughout the university. And I'll send it over to Maria Judith.
Hi, thank you. And hi, everyone again. My name is Maria Judith Rodriguez Herrera. I am the Vice Chancellor for Human Resources. I also serve as co-chair for the Anti-Racism Task Force and joined this TRHT committee this year. So excited to be here and also to think through the work that we're doing, to hear your feedback about what we are going to be sharing with you today and how we will continue framing the work of the center in alignment with our mission and our goals. So thank you for having us, and I will pass it on to Karen Christ. Dr. Christ.
Why, thank you. Yes, newly minted, conferred in August. Thank you. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Success, and am very happy to be a member of the TRHT Advisory Committee, as I believe the work of the TRHT is super mission aligned and helps forward many of the principles and the goals that we have as a university as we work towards racial healing and cultivating ourselves as an anti-racist institution. And I look forward to our presentation and hearing your feedback today about this and some exciting plans that we have coming up in the next few months.
Thank you, Karen. Dr. Stefan Gillum is our external member. One of the recommendations or actions we have as a TRHT Advisory Committee is to involve a member of the community external to Antioch University. So Dr. Gillum has some ties in terms of our New England location, but he participated in our Summer Institute and brought great value and will continue on with us in terms of this work. And Lim Watson was the person that was providing administrative leadership for TRHT and serves as our ex officio member. So I had some big shoes to try to fill there, but he is certainly very much involved in this work, but unable to be with us on this evening. So I will turn it over as I advance the slide to Pia Alexander.
Good evening again, everyone. So part of what our presentation is this evening is helping you to understand a little bit about what the framework is, and then how as an institute we participate in getting the word out about that framework and getting more engagement around the framework and the TRHT as a center here at Antioch. So the TRHT framework as it relates to racial healing is, as you'll see on the screen, that it's the people work that leads to the transformation of systems and the telling of hard truths about past wrongs and present consequences, repairing the harm of racism, replacing the deeply held system that fuels racism with one that sees the inherent value of all people. And you'll be hearing more about this as it was developed. Authentic relationship building across real and perceived differences. And the two foundational areas that all TRHT communities address are narrative change, which means truth-telling, and the racial healing circles, which you'll also hear more about this evening. Racial healing, which is trust and relationship building. So really this TRHT work is about really meaningfully improving and enriching the experience of everyone that's part of our community at Antioch. So this summer we had the opportunity as an advisory committee to attend the TRHT Institute, which was virtual this particular year, and we had a mentor. We were represented as a team, Dr. Helms Pickett, myself, Dr. Kat Bell, Dr. Stefan Gillum, Malakia Cantrice, Maria Judith Rodriguez, and Shantae Walker. And we attended this institute over a number of days virtually, and it was a wonderful opportunity to really see the way that TRHT focused work really looks different at each institution and on each campus based on the ways that they take the framework and then turn that into a mission and a vision and programmatic activities. Part of what we did as a team was develop our vision statement. And it was a wonderful opportunity for us to see other academic institutions, their vision statements, how some of those came to life, and also how they were different or similar and in adherence to what their vision statement was. So for us, our vision statement is that in 5 years, we envision a full integration of the TRHT framework throughout Antioch culture that crosses all of our regions, roles, and hierarchies. This looks like a shared definition of belonging, transforming curriculum, and opportunities for both truth-telling and leadership in alignment with the TRHT framework and tenets of anti-racist pedagogies and scholarship. And you'll be hearing more about this evening. Next slide, please. I will pass this along to our next presenter.
Thanks, Pia. So it was really wonderful to get to be in community with so many TRHT centers that were both forming and in the process of revisiting what they've already put into place. Our revised vision is a much more specific vision than what we had the first year. So the first year was really about getting approval. Do we even have an idea? This year, we dug really deeply into what is required for us to set some real concrete goals and objectives. And the first was to start to investigate and evaluate labor costs of founding and maintaining a TRHT campus. So this is in direct response to some of the conversations that emerged at our messy conversations last year this time, through the ARTF meetings, and through thinking about what it means to invest in our humanity and our compassion here in ways that we have not before. And to address the culture of volunteerism that we have at Antioch. We have a lot of really great ideas, a lot of terrific initiatives. We rarely have the funding that's necessary. So as part of our revised goals, it is to secure funding and use it towards the creation of activities and discussions. We might do this through partnering with existing groups and leveraging our stakeholder passion, because our TRHT work is adjacent to and part of the cultural change that is happening at Antioch. And that's part of our goal, is to create a space of truth and belonging, and really give our students, faculty, and staff a space to feel that it is theirs, that they have value and can tell their truths. Because we want this to happen across all of our kind of constituencies at Antioch, we need to build a stronger shared understanding of this work in creating a culture of belonging. We have disparate regions and groups within Antioch. We are one of the only institutions that showed up to the Institute who had to say, well, how are we going to represent the truths that are in 4 different physical locations, an online contingency that stretches across the world, and from traditional age all the way through very non-traditional age students. So how are we going to do that? And so these are really exciting things, especially when we think about the calls for transparency and truth-telling around Antioch's history. So we can start with our current history in motion and think about what perspectives are being left out, what's being elevated, and really kind of dig into some of the narratives that we have used as evidence of our commitment to social justice that may be incomplete, and definitely are incomplete or totally false narratives in some cases of our the way that we have interacted with say Coretta Scott King's story, right? So we want to make sure that we are doing that truth telling. Stephanie, can you advance it? Thank you. One of the things that we were challenged to do is create some concrete action steps. And we started with thinking about what is going to bring us together. And we thought about creating a one book, one Antioch movement. We will be announcing this text a little bit later in the presentation, but this is ready to go starting in January 2025 as part of the National Day of Racial Healing, which we are kind of leveraging into a national or into an Antioch week of racial healing. One of the biggest parts for us is partnering with the Strategic Planning Committee to make sure that there's TRHT grounding in decision-making and budget priorities. A couple of our goals are to establish the labor that's necessary and evaluate how that will be funded and then create funding. So partnering with strategic planning, partnering with upper administration and getting commitments to fund TRHT work, very important to us. We also want to engage student activists in collaboration with ARTF and use our TRHT framework to frame multiple discussions around political, climate, and other relevant issues. So you may have seen some open discussions and healing circles that were not titled Racial Healing Circles this fall. This is just a start of what we want to kind of bring to Antioch and use this similar framework to create positive sharing experiences for our students, faculty, and staff. We are also making sure that we are elevating the transparency and truth telling through our student scholars. So Mally's project works on TRHT, and she will be creating a 5-episode podcast that in our next set of goals, we want to continue on and see how we can engage multiple means of expression and representation, partly, as Mally brought up in other conversations, to push back against how we've reified the written word. And at Antioch, this is especially true at an institution that relies heavily on writing as our method of assessment and also our method of narrative. And then we want to make sure that we are establishing concrete benchmarks based on the TRHT evaluation practices. And our concrete benchmarks will look at climate survey and revisiting climate survey once we've implemented some of our steps, assessing the number of DEI education opportunities that we offer and that other people are attending. Think about how our racial healing circle participants are reflecting on the experience. Evaluate how much participation there is in TRHT activities, and then really look at our website and our communications and how we engage our audiences in multiple ways to really make people feel like they belong. And I'm going to go ahead and pass to our next speaker.
I was moving my cursor. So this is Stephanie Helms Pickett again. So we are going to provide an opportunity for you to witness and bear witness to what it feels like to be in a racial healing circle. We have two of our trained facilitators, Malakia Contreras and Shantae Walker, and they will provide some agreements and kind of set the stage for what would happen. And we'll get to witness it and be able to talk about it on the other side. So I will turn it over to them as I advance to the next slide.
Hey everyone, I'm back. And what we're first going to do is, I guess, talk a little bit about what actually a racial healing circle is and what that stems from. And so you see that there are 4 descriptors on here, and we'll kind of go through each one to talk about what it stems from, because the Racial Healing Circle and the TRHT framework was initiated by Gail Christopher, who was originally in medicine and in health, and found that it was that racial healing was one of the biggest determinants of physical health or racial dynamics. So the first one is prescriptive, which means she considers racial healing circles as a form of a prescription of medicine and medicinal. And I'm just going to just directly quote her. And she was asked a question in an interview, why do you call it a prescription? And she said it's a prescription for improving the physical, social, emotional, and economic health of America. And there's an expanding movement in the field of public health and medicine called social determinants of health. And now it's acknowledging in health science that from 70 to 80% of the factors that influence and create health issues and benefits have little to do with medicine. They are mostly informed by social determinants, and in a racialized society, that is a social determinant. And then in much research, even though racism is not listed as on the CDC as an actual determinant of physical health, to put this into perspective, racial segregation and disproportionate hierarchical wealth and income studies now say that the biggest informant or social determinant affecting our healthy lifestyle or lack thereof is our zip code. And zip codes are determined in the United States very much racially, right? The other describer or descriptor of a racial healing circle is that they are intimate. There are limits to creating a racial healing circle of numbers so that you actually have the ability to speak and listen and be heard. So the intimacy required is also for safety, or as safe as possible in the unsafe space of racial human hierarchy. It's not finite. It's not resolute. There is not one racial healing circle that heals all. It's an ongoing practice of restoration, and it's circle processing, like an indigenous practice of a way of life. And it's democratic, so it's very hierarchical in order to dismantle this human value, this hierarchical human value, in that we all, the same way we aspire to be a democracy as a nation, this particular circle or these particular circles are democratic in that each voice is heard. So can we advance to the next slide, please? Shantae and I, my colleague, are going to describe what happens when you first enter into a racial circle. And this is actual touchstones that we present in facilitating the beginning of a racial circle, where there are touchstones that as a circle and a group of people, we agree on before even beginning to speak and facilitate the healing process. I'll be explaining the first half of them, and I believe my colleague Shantae will be taking over when we get to the sixth one.
Yep. And it's important. And I wanted to add, Mally, sorry. I wanted to add, just to provide just a little context, because of our time, we really wanted to create an abbreviated version of it. So you won't see the full out circle, but this just gives you an idea of how we enter the circle and the agreements that all of the participants agree to. We sit with it. Participants are able to even add to the touchstone. So these are not set in stone. This just is a list, a starting list for the group as well.
Yes. So it's created as a baseline, right? The touchstone. And for in an actual healing circle, if you were entering into this healing space, everybody would take the time and review the touchstones and then come together and agree that we can agree on those touchstones and add if we want to add. And also there would be a description of each of the concepts. Instead, because of our limited time, racial healing circles are usually about 2 hours long. We're just going to kind of guide that along. So obviously being 100% present is a space that is necessary to speak your truth and also to hear others' truth. And so it also is extension and presumption of all being welcome into the circle. We are all charged with listening deeply, rather than, and that looks like listening to what is actually being said rather than listening to respond. It's listening to what is being said for the speaker in that moment. It's always by invitation, right? There isn't coercion in a healing circle, right? There is no, it's not, some of the packaged and commercialized versions of restorative justice where you enter justice into a space because of having maybe committed some harm and you are coerced kind of into facilitating the circle to avoid punishment, right? This is always by invitation. And then there is no fixing here. It is not our intent or a circle's intent to consider something each person or any person a problem that needs fixed or something that needs fixed. It is a collection and a collective healing that we're working towards by speaking and listening to truths. And finally, suspend judgment. That would seem obvious, but it's very difficult as humans functioning in a hierarchical human structure to suspend judgment for all things, including ourselves. The most important piece of this, in order to be fully present in a healing circle, is suspending even judgment of yourself so that you are freer to speak your truth. And so with that, I pass it on to my colleague.
All right, number 6, identifying assumptions. So our assumptions are usually invisible to us, yet they undergird our worldview and thus our decisions and our actions. This is important and something that comes up a lot in that we ask participants after they come back to the larger circle to reflect about what did it feel like to be the listener? What did it feel like to be the speaker in the space? And that this is really a self-reflective space and practice. Speak your truth. Say what is in your heart, trusting that your voice will be heard and your contribution respected. Your truth may be different from even the opposite of what another in the circle has said. Speaking your truth is not debating with or correcting or interpreting what another has said. Own your truth by speaking only for yourself using I statements. Respect silence. Silence is a rare gift in our busy world. After you or another has spoken, take time to reflect and fully listen without immediately filling the space with words. Maintain confidentiality. Create a safe space by respecting the confidential nature and content of discussions held in a circle. What is said in the circles remains there. And the last one, certainly not the least, when things get difficult, turn to wonder. If you find yourself disagreeing with another, becoming judgmental, shutting down in defense, try turning to wonder. I wonder what brought her to this place. I wonder what my reaction teaches me. I wonder what he's feeling right now. A lot of the practice of racial healing is really about storytelling, listening to someone else tell their story without any interjection, without any assumptions made by you. And these touchstones reflect that through and through. And we can go to the next slide. So Mally, you're on mute.
Yeah, I realized that too late in. So we didn't put what we're going to do next, which is more model what beginning of racial healing circles look like. Shantae, I don't know if you want to start us off with the call out to the group
Abs-
Yes.
Absolutely. So in this part, the first activity, the opening activity we'll have everyone participate because this is about entering something into the chat. The main circle, the next introduction, self-introduction will only be with the committee so that we can model it for you and you'll be able to see that. So our opening activity is describe what you are feeling at this moment in one word. Although it may be tempting, try to avoid explaining your choice of the word. Trust that there's a reason for omitting detail. So in the chat, if you can feel free to type in your one word.
I love seeing open, calm.
Yes, engaged. We love that word.
Yes. Love to see it. So
Curious.
then when we do this, we use only one word and without explanation because it sets the tone for we're acknowledging this is something new that we are entering into, a space that we're entering into that can challenge out what we've been led to do most of our lives, which is be our authentic selves in the presence of one another without judgment, and also maybe hear some hard things, right? That, or say some hard things that, you know, that are kind of the foundation of messy conversations, right? But that's why we do it with one word to start us off with, and then to sit with it.
Yep, and it's important to, I think, see other people's one word as well, because we know we are all humans sharing a space. We are trained facilitators, however, we are a part of this experience as well. And this helps connects us, and to see that we're all sharing a space. There's different feelings and different things in the room to start us off as well.
Absolutely. Now, then what we would do next is if we were in our own, you know, in the healing circle at large, we then would go into a deeper reflection, right, of what the, it's like a next level with a little bit more time, and you'd go into breakout rooms, and it's usually just partner oriented, you and one other person, where you're given a couple of questions, right? And then you speak to those questions when you're in your breakout room for a certain amount of time, and the person listens, and then you switch and answer the questions as the partner listens. And then we come back at large and talk about it. But what we're going to do is model this. And so the next more deeper reflection is going to be stating your name, what you believe to be your superpower, and what the history or the story is behind your name, right? Whether you've created it or there is an actual story. So I'll start by modeling it and giving my piece. And then, Shantae, do you want to do the name? Okay.
Yep, I'll go.
So it's your name, superpower, and the history or story of your name. So my name is Malakia Contreras. We've established that. My superpower is truth. And there is an actual story by or about my name and history of my name integral to truth, racial healing, and transformation and anti-racism acts. So yeah, I was born in the 70s, yes, dating myself, and out in California where the movement was moving. And so my father was very much involved in activism work and hosting Black Panther meetings and things such as, but he and his friends were decided, they were all in their childbearing years, he and my mom married, that when they have children, they are going to name them from some sort of African, or some sort of country from the African continent, so that it would have meaning in our ancestral heritage, and that we would also not take our father's last name at birth, because we wanted to acknowledge that as enslaved folks, we were robbed of our actual names, named, and then upon emancipation, took on the surname of enslavers, right? So they decided they didn't want any of their children to have enslavers' names as their names. So the day I was born, my father, you get the name of your married parents or your father on your birth certificate at that time. And my father immediately went and changed it at the Department of Health to ensure that I did not take his last name. My father's last name was Miller. And he then thought very carefully through what my name would actually be. And so Malakia is Swahilian for angel, and Contrice is Swahilian for queen. He had really high hopes, right? And so that is the story of my name, and a bit challenging and a bit intimidating, right? Because, sets the tone. So that's my story. Shantae?
Hi, I'm Shantae. I believe a superpower that I possess is, I would always say that if my life could ever be defined, or my presence could ever be defined as something, it would be a musical. Like, I would break out, I would walk into a room and a song will play for my mood, because that's literally what happens in my head. I was just doing it before the call. So there's a song for every moment in my head, and I just walk like I'm dancing on rainbows, even in the midst of hard situations. So I do believe that is my superpower. And a history of my name. There's not really much history other than my mother named me to rhyme with my brother, Dante. Not really much creativity there. I would say I've had an interesting connection to my name, because I wanted to change it, because there was like 7 Shantaes on the south side of Chicago, and they all were into some dangerous stuff. But I would say I started to feel more connected to it when I actually traveled to Haiti, and the Haitians couldn't believe that I was from America and my name was Shantae, and they would just sing anytime that they was around me, because Shantae means to sing. And so they was like, and so it just brought such beauty to my name. So that's the history and just kind of my connection. So I will ping it to one of our advisory committee members. Feel free to hop in.
Thank you both so much. I think you demonstrated the gift that we don't often get to pause and hear that, and that deep sharing of who you are, and that there was so much love and intention put into your name, even if it rhymed with your brother. It was very important for your mom to have that connection, and you all even starting us with allowing us to name how we were feeling, and the extent to which we were able to suspend everything that may have happened before we got to this place and really to be present. I saw people leaning in and nodding and connecting with the gift of you all sharing your stories. So you all imagine, we just got a little snippet. Can you imagine 2 hours filled with the opportunity and the gift of hearing someone, deeply hearing them? And as Mally said in the beginning, not listening to respond, but listening because it is a gift to be able to share space with each other and to hear one another, we get to understand the intentions behind Dr. Christopher's work and how we can heal and how we can lean in and not only do that, but what we do from that point, how what's said here stays with us, what's learned here, it leaves with us. And in that leaving and that departure, putting something into action. So thank you both for modeling that. Mally, you're going to say something. I can see you getting ready to move forward. Go for it.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add a little bit too. In what we would do next is then ask, how did it feel to listen to someone, and how did it feel to speak and be heard? We would ask that coming back into the larger group, and also to kind of pinpoint here the entire structure of TRHT is based on dismantling that hierarchical human value, and the way that it is purported to be done through TRHT work is to be able to see yourself and one another, right? To see our collective humanity. And so while that seemed, it's kind of deep, each time you go back to speak, it's a more deep reflection on something or someone in your life, right? And you begin to see yourself in people rather than what we obviously see now physically in this hierarchical system that we have of valuing humanity, right? It's the point of collective humanity and leveling out that hierarchy in a space that's actually meaningful and intentional rather than performative.
Are there other thoughts or comments that anyone would like to share, given what we witnessed there? And you can put something in the chat as well if you don't want to come off of mute.
I think Kat's raising her hand.
Kat, go for it.
So thank you so much for modeling that. I've had the opportunity to participate in 3 or 4 of the racial healing circles over the last year and a half or so, and every single one is different. So each conversation prompts me to think about different aspects. So while we kind of heard like name and superpower, sometimes it's a little bit different. Sometimes it might be a song or something that's just important to you. And I think that that's one of the beautiful pieces of the racial healing circles, is that not only do you not know who you might encounter and what stories you might hear, but you don't necessarily know what stories might be prompted for you to help you kind of connect back to yourself and your truth, and what it means to think about things that we don't often think about, and to have the luxury of reflection, which I think is something that we really stress at Antioch through a lot of our classes. This gives us an opportunity to do that with other humans at Antioch or outside of Antioch. I know that we'll be doing some work that's in combination with Otterbein and seeing how we can connect with people who are in different regions and come from very different backgrounds. It's been really great. And I will say that it is, coming up with things on the fly and hearing the prompt for the first time, because you don't get the list of questions beforehand. I'm a planner, I'm an outliner. So it really does force me in particular to be present in the moment and really think about what I'm sharing and what's really important to me. And I'll go ahead and pass to anybody else in the audience or in our group.
I was typing, so I'll just name that it was very validating to hear parts of each story and superpower that felt like they were similar in some way to my experience, or different, or even that sense of, oh, I had that feeling, or I feel this way. It just helped me tune into my feelings in that moment. So it was really special.
I have one, guys. I put in the chat my question. If in your training encounter examples of participants using non-verbal and non-written language to share, like a more visual way to communicate their story, their name, or the stuff. That would be interesting for people that need that kind of approach to sharing. Have you seen that?
I have not, and that's why I started to do research on it. Because as an emerging dance movement therapist, movements, a lot of times, you know, I know I've heard in my circles where it was hard for people to communicate what was actually coming up for them or what story is connected to it. And I think, you know, our original language is movement. Our original form of communicating is different things. And I'm curious about even the visual aspects, right? So you think about art, you think about all these other ways that we express ourselves. But I have heard that, you know, words sometimes is hard, even when you feel like you have the words. I know it is for me, so.
Well, and I would say that, so this stems from Indigenous work that would have been nonverbal communication. And as a descendant of deaf non-speaking ancestors, American Sign Language movement, all of those are welcomed in the spaces. When we're in a virtual space, it gets kind of difficult, right? But you can still conduct, you can do it, right? I don't know if any of you have experienced like Theater of the Oppressed, you know, where you would be expressing yourself with your body, like instead of your words. That could all, racial healing circles don't have limits like that. They're designed to not be finite or enclosed into verbal communication only. But it's also an extension of moving away from one of the tenets of white supremacy in the academy, which is worship of the written word, and robbing certain people of their ability to speak their narrative, right? However they speak it. You know, however they convey it. It is the space for narrative.
Thank you so much, Shanta and Mileka, for this for your responses to this. Very appreciated. I was thinking because of the recently we have this moment in the year is the moment of Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. And the altars are like a pure visual language. Like every time you see an element there is a very eloquent element visually. And it's telling a lot, it's telling stories, telling everything, but no word of any kind, right? And then sometimes that's very powerful. So that's the reason that prompted me to ask you. So I'm stopped myself because I see other people that need space. Stepping back.
Let's go to Maria, Judith, and then Ahmad.
Thank you, Stephanie. I just wanted to add, you know, the beauty of when you listen to both Malakia and Shante, just share with us the stories of their name, their superpowers, how they connect. It just, as a person that is listening, makes you think, oh, well, I've never thought about the story of my name, or what kind of joy it brings to me to identify myself with the way in which my parents decided to name me, or how I feel in my head when I think about my name and what it means to me. So it's just, you know, it seems simple, but it's not simple at all, right? How when we share, when we open up, when we get in that space where we can be ourselves and we can share a bit more of ourselves. I love what Malakia said, you know, it's you connect with each other, right? It's a way of connection, and we so much need more of that. So I'm just gonna stop there. It was really great seeing you both in that exercise, and I will pass it on to Ahmad.
Good evening, everyone. This is just been very very emotional. And I just love the fact that anytime that Malachi Contreras and Shante are sharing something, I just feel a sense of openness. And I'm not afraid to share what's on my mind. And what got me was when we are going over the norms of the group and what it is that what we're how we're supposed to act in the circle. If I'm being transparent, and I think I can here, I respect the norms, but what bothers me as an African American male in this system of oppression to some degree, is that I do want to hear at times. I don't like the silence from those who don't look like me. I feel that I have been silenced my whole life in different portions. So that being said, I've had powerful results from using this process in my school. It's been documented. It's official. But if I'm being transparent with all of you here, after what I've navigated my whole life, I itch sometimes with saying I do want to hear what the other persuasion has to say. I don't want your silence. I want to hear responses, and that's because, and it may not be for any of you that are here now, but white supremacy gets to hide behind white supremacy a whole hell of a lot, and I'm tired of their hidden daggers that I've had to navigate for a period of time. So sometimes I like to hear from looking at it from, at times I suffer from implicit bias, but then there becomes explicit bias that I'm able to own that. But I like to hear what they have to say instead of them utter in silence, because I feel it's a sense of another sense of privilege. They get to be silent. So, and I don't know if I'm off, but I felt comfortable sharing that in the space with you guys.
I want to make sure I respond to that, because what that says is that we didn't convey then in a racial healing circle, everybody speaks, and it is for everyone. And there is a there is a response eventually. What the circle is just asking is that take a moment of reflection to process before responding, not don't respond at all. That's not the thing, right? So this is supposed to be a space where we do listen. It just happened to be that, and when you become trained as a facilitator, you normally there wouldn't be like two women of color as the co-facilitators, because we're also modeling, right, that there should be diversity even in the co-facilitation, right? So that everybody speaks and everybody listens. But yes, thank you for sharing, Ahmad.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
So Mally and Shantae, thank you so much for that. I know we have maybe 2 or 3 slides I want to make sure that we do, and then we can, I think when I was at my first messy conversations, Clarence came on after the content and he said, now it's time to get messy. And I just got so tickled about that. And I use that as often as I can. So we will make sure that we finish a couple things. One of them we mentioned earlier, we really want to make sure that we share. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen and toss it over, I believe, to Maria Judith, but okay, no slide deck. Let's see where my slide deck went. Kat, if you have it up anywhere, because I'm on 2 screens and it disappeared. Let's see. I can. Asa, will you make Kat a co-host for me, please? Apologies to y'all. Yep, there it is. Thank you so much. Close your eyes if you get dizzy going through as Kat moves to the place where we were. And there's Maria Judith. Thank you so much, Kat, and thank you, Asa, behind the scenes.
Just let me know when you want me to advance, MJ.
Were we planning to skip the evaluation strategies, or is that going to be covered?
You may cover it. I think we're still good for that.
All right, okay. So in terms of the evaluation strategies, the climate survey revisited refined strategic priorities with a focus on tier movement to address the students first, then shifted to institutional impacts. We are also thinking on collecting data on the number of DEI opportunities in and out of Antioch that our faculty, staffs, and students participate in either on their own or as a task. Racial Healing Circle participant reflections and evaluation of Healing Circle process, prompts, etc. Track ongoing participation in TRHT opportunities offered by AU, Antioch University, TRHT Center, and the Office of Equity, Belonging, and Culture. And then track website and communications engagement. And when it comes to communication, we already have a website, but we want to make sure that we maintain it, that is up to date, that we expand that information to make sure that we include tools, events, processes, more opportunities for conversation and for learning, and then publicize it, make sure that people knows that it exists and that they can find it. Create a continuing podcast series after the 5-part podcast series by Malakia that was mentioned before. Ensure that information is not buried, but is also accessible. Create a portal highlighting professional development opportunities centering on TRHT concepts and practice. Leverage learning management system, and we're talking about our new Brightspace system. Establish base communication with AU, Antioch University, and Otterbein and our affiliation partners as an opportunity to continue expanding our efforts through the center. Next slide. Intentionally engage in community feedback. We also want to hear, like we did today, your thoughts, what is resonating with you, what you would like to learn more about, what you would like to talk more about, like we just did. And thank you again, Ahmad, for sharing in the way that you did. Establish both ongoing and topical RX circles for the AU community, our affiliation partners and alums as we continue expanding the center. Continue work with current stakeholders to institutionalize Racial Day of Healing, and more information on that will be coming soon. Focus on cleaning our own house, so to speak, to prepare for outside community engagement. This is very critical and something that we have been all the way thinking as a group, how as we advance this work, we also will engage others based on what we have learned. So with that, I will pass it on to Stephanie.
And Karen is going to talk, but I am holding up the book that Karen is mentioning. And Karen, go for it.
Yes, thank you. So part of our One Book, One Antioch initiative is that we would like to engage the community in reading Lighting the Fires of Freedom, African American Women in the Civil Rights Movement by Janet Duarte Bell. She is an Antioch College and Graduate School Leadership and Change alum and civil rights activist, and wanting to let everyone know that unlimited digital copies are available through the library. You can also order a hard copy, and for people like me, it is also available if you want as an Audible. So we hope that you will join us. Thank you. Yeah, we hope that you will join us in this activity, and we're wanting to share it with you now, even though it's going to be part of our January 2025 initiative, in case anyone wants to get the book sooner rather than later and spend some of your holiday time in relaxed reading, instead of this trying to work and read and do all of the things at the same time. So that brings us to saving the date for our National Day of Racial Healing, which is Tuesday, January 21st, but was as alluded earlier, we have a whole host of activities that we're planning that will bring us through the week. And not just one day, and more on that will be forthcoming. And to Rosa's point, we will have a combination of arts and words and time together and other activities that we're doing. And then we hope that you will get involved and tell your truth, read and learn. We have a TRHT at antioch.edu email, and our website is here. And I will, if someone, I can't watch the chat at the same time. If someone hasn't put the website link in the chat, I can do that when I'm done talking, but really appreciate the community coming together and allowing us an opportunity to share this work with you and invite you in to this work with us.
Thanks, everyone. I think, Kat, we could stop sharing. We really want to give a shout out to the Messy Conversations planning team for inviting us. As you know, we've got to snowball the work of TRHT, so we appreciate this opportunity and we want you to spread the word. We thank everyone that showed up to have this conversation, and we certainly see David put in the chat for next week's Messy Conversations. So make sure you check that out. Asa has been wonderful, and Sarah Beth has been wonderful, and even making the original extension to us. So we have a little time if there are some questions that you have. If we have some TRHT members that have to hop off, we certainly thank you and wish you well on that. Certainly appreciative of our students who work and thrive at Antioch and for modeling this beautiful practice. Extra special appreciation to both of them. So yeah. Questions or thoughts or reflections? Oh, thank you, Cece. That's beautiful. And also, I think I saw maybe Sarah Beth mentioned earlier saying that was a beautiful practice. Be on the lookout for spring as we try to engage training for facilitators as well. Russell, I see your hand.
Thank you, Dr. Pickett. How are you?
Good, and you?
Yeah, this was a great session. Thank you. I just want to clarify, in January, that's going to be open. Is that going to be marketed to the entire Antioch community? Is that what's happening on that day or that week?
We are having several opportunities. As Karen said, we're still in our planning. Our Racial Day of Healing will be in partnership with Otterbein like it was last year. On that Wednesday, we will have a book discussion with Dr. Bell on what Karen shared. And then the rest of it we'll keep a little secret because we're still percolating it a little bit, but we will be opening up in a way that will make sure that you all know that if you want to share it with other members and friends of Antioch, that will be available.
Yeah, I just raised that because I have a class, the class that I'm teaching that quarter, this would be perfect for the class to be part of it. So
we love it.
I'd like to find ways to build some of it into my syllabus for that class. So that's why
let's do it. Let's do it, definitely.
So I'll connect with you offline about that and see what elements would be appropriate. Thank you so much.
That would be perfect. I saw Ahmad and then Clarence.
Yeah, that's funny. I'm proud to say I've used Messy Conversations concept with my faculty, and it was published in our newsletter. Also, I wanted to put pressure on Malakia Contreras and her partner Chantel, I believe, or I think I said her name correctly. Could this be something that is offered to my faculty if we can find time to do that? Is that something that you could think about at least? And I wanted to know if I could invite my staff also to participate in what you guys have planning in January.
think so. Ahmad, we will, if you want to shoot us an email, I'll put my email in the chat or Kat, I saw the email, but I don't know that I've ever seen an email come through that TRHT. Maybe I'm not on it yet. So I will put my email on here, Ahmad.
Okay.
If you want to reach out and then we can go from there.
Thank you. That's great.
And we'll check that email address just to make sure. Would be to introduce this model to transfer. That would be really cool, Cece.
Right, because
Take us. Go ahead.
you mentioned being willing to come and speak to the class for a bit. It would be really powerful to have that built into the conversation.
We have talked about it. That would be cool. All right.
All right, I'll reach out to you.
Sounds good. Clarence.
Well, first directing this comment to you, Stephanie. Les Brown says you can quote anyone once and you can own it after that. So you're welcome to own my statement of being messy at any time at this point and call it your own.
Thank you for that. I'll still give appropriation.
Secondly, I just want to thank you guys because for me, for you to model the practice that you are creating as you move forward, it reminds me a lot on Messy Conversation through the years. Our planning team have often heard me bring up Race Relay, which professor from the New York Film and Television Academy produces for various universities around the country. And it begins with a healing circle where the audience is completely in a circle and they're all given musical or eurythmic type instruments. And there's a master drummer who guides the audience as they settle in with these instruments. So it's like the community connecting on this vibration. And then they get into the nuts and bolts of everything. But most of it is led by a group of actors. And then there's video support to enact the various societal harms that are done racially through all different cultures. So this reminded me and took me back to the moment that I first experienced it at USC. So I thank you for that. And my third comment, and I'm overstepping on toes of our planning team, but it would be wonderful if your book discussion was Our Messy Conversation that week in January, because it's on women and civil rights, and that's a subject that's dear to many of our hearts. And nudge, 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 Dr. Elaine Parker Gills, who is currently teaching a course on civil rights. And I'm sure, not knowing what the book is about, but understanding who those luminaries were, I'm sure that many of those people are in that book. They would have to be, Ella Baker and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm looking forward to getting a copy of it myself. So thank you for sharing that as well.
TRHT wheels turning now, because that makes me think about the what we talked about as an advisory board in telling the truth about our connection with Coretta Scott King and how we tell the story that Coretta Scott King, is an Antioch student, but we don't much actually talk about her real lived experience. And that would be very much something that could be kind of ruled into that that book discussion and the National Day of Healing or
Well,
National Week of
also, I
Healing.
think often at Antioch, when we talk about Coretta Scott King, not often do people reveal or even discuss the actual climate of Antioch when Coretta Scott King was a student and what some of the adverse effects were in that community where Antioch is located and what she had to go through in order to be a student. So those are things that I think often are missed when we rally to hold up the banner. Already Coretta Scott King was a student here, you know, I mean, I look
Yeah,
back
that
now.
we don't tell
I'm
the truth
sorry?
about it. We don't tell the
Exactly.
truth about it. We advertise it. That's the truth telling part that we were talking about, and really giving the truth to Antioch's history is to tell what Coretta Scott King's actual experience was here, not just advertising her as a marketing ploy.
Absolutely. And I actually worked for Coretta Scott King for a short period of time, but that's in my book, so you have to wait for that.
Bragging rights.
Ahmad.
If I may, I guess this is the right, the right forum to share. I would like to see, I guess it's going to be post conversation about what we're dealing with now. The barbershop talk and his talk in the streets as a Black male, and the feelings about our vice president, hopefully president to be Kamala Harris. Some talk about where we are, where some of the brothers feel out in the streets that may not be in these kind of settings. What are their feelings about why they feel like they have to be engaged in Trump? Whatever they're engaged in is their right and their business. But I think it's time to have some real conversation about that, because it's real. It's a conversation. It needs to be had. By that time, we'll know the verdict of what's going on, and I think we may have been missing the boat not having that conversation at Antioch in a organized fashion, because it's a thing. And I just wanted to put that out there in the atmosphere, because it's definitely a real conversation in these barbershops, and I feel that it's an opportunity to clarify things or to give another perspective on some things in these settings.
Thank you, Ahmad. I think you've been dropping truth the whole time you've been in this space, and thank you for sharing that. A couple things came in my head when you were speaking. One is, even not, certainly not putting anything else on your plate, because it sounds like it's probably very full. But there is an opportunity for like Antioch Voices and to get that narrative out even before November 5th, right? And the other piece is during our week of activities, as a couple of us have alluded to, LaKoya, who was on the call, has agreed to kind of facilitate our truth telling. And so that may be an opportunity that you may choose to share that truth, as we look for truths from Antioch community members to share during that week, and maybe a little bit after, depending on how many we get. So let's connect about that. But, before we get there, Antioch Voices would be a great place to share that narrative that's happening in barbershops. It's funny you say that, because it was what my pastor was preaching about yesterday. She had invited all the men to come to the altar, and just was, affirming them and saying, it's really odd how you all have become this staple and being, amplified in a way that we don't normally see, all through a political lens or potential gain there. So it was mirroring a little bit of what you shared. David.
Hey, first, of course, thank you all for being here and walking us through some of these practices. Early on, you were talking about the vision statement, and I'd love to hear more about a particular aspect of it. If I heard you correctly, you said that part of that is a 5-year full implementation of the TRHT framework. And I wonder if you could put some flesh on them bones, if you will. Like, what would that look like? What are you, yeah, what are your goals? What's the work ahead in that regard?
I will invite any and all of our committee members to share. I saw Pia come off, so Pia might be ready to go. Pia, go for it.
I can just share a little bit and then pass it over to others. But part of the development of that was really thinking about how we aren't one campus or one institution. So, I mean, we're one institution with multiple locations. So when we were going through that and trying to figure out as a team how to articulate that vision, part of it was really trying to understand what have other institutions done where they've really had authentic programmatic partnerships external to their institution, so that when we talk about truth telling, it's not just within our bubble as Antioch. Part of that framework is we're connected to the communities that we're part of and that we serve at, and that we educate students to go out and serve in, and that we serve in ourselves. And so we want to make sure that we have some real roots that we're putting down, so that the truth that we're telling is not just through a mission statement, but the framework really looks like, okay, well, if it's a culture of belonging, does that just mean within the institution, or does it mean that when something happens external, that we can actually, rely on our neighbors and partners, and they can rely on us and know that we're going to be present in the community as well. So that's one aspect of this vision, that if that were to come to life, that would be wonderful. Definitely the one book, one Antioch, as part of this would be that our community understands how to speak the same language around this. Our Malakia and Shantae articulated it. We all articulated different things, but they articulated so beautifully that to understand Dr. Gail Christopher's model and to really understand what the meaning of this work is, it helps that we have a shared language or a shared understanding around the work that's been done, the history, and where we might want to take it. So that one book, one Antioch, is a really integral part of that vision. And then I'll pass it over to the rest of my committee. But hopefully that's helpful just as a touch point for what that looks like.
Yeah, and I know as part of that planning committee, there's multiple tenets of the integration that each of us kind of had in mind. I know one of the ones or the aspects I was kind of hyped about is the integration of the tenets of TRHT pedagogically, scholarship-wise. We talked about the possibility of creating fellowships for different schools and colleges of a TRHT fellow that facilitates racial healing circles, looks through pedagogy, looks through syllabi, looks through content, and for the lens of truth, racial healing, and transformation as part of all aspects of learning, similar to Gail Christopher coming to it from the medical lens and it ending up being in the educational lens, right? And the framework, I think they're not called pillars anymore. I can't remember what they're called, but there's like law, education, and all of them intersect. And so integrating TRHT in those different subjects and issues throughout Antioch was another part of the vision of that framework can apply to any school, any major, any aspect.
I think, David, what I would add, and I appreciate what both Pia and Mally said, is I think we all look at it from as a collective, and then what are the things that we may individually be able to influence, right? And so that aspect about truth telling is so powerful for me. And I think Maria, Judith, and I sit in a place of not only hearing the truth, but accepting the truths and using that truth as decisions are made, right? Because I think I find us to be a kind community. We will listen, but do we take that what we've learned there and act upon it, or change our decision based upon that truth? Or are we just say, wow, that was just really powerful, okay, I'm going to go on about my life? And so that truth telling and that belongingness is so deeply connected for me. And so what does that mean for how business gets done? What does that mean for decisions that are made? The extent to which we know that we have hierarchy, and we've said that for a number of reasons, but how do we engage shared governance? How do we actually ask for input and use it, and not just say, oh, well, we ask everybody how they felt and then we go in the opposite direction? And that's changing culture, right? And that's gonna take some time. And so when you see 5 years, it's like little palpitations start happening of like, how do we do that quick? It's not resolved, but can we start on a mission where we understand this, and where we're collectively saying, is that a tenet of the center that we say that we believe in, and that had to be endorsed from the top for us to even, get in the running for it? So 5 years is short, but I think we learned a lot in this institute. We're still learning a lot. We have some ambitious plans for this center, even for this academic year. And what does that look like, even with leadership leaving and leadership entering, to say this is what we hold true and what we value as a community? Maria, Judith, and then Kat. I'm sorry if I did it in the wrong order. I'm just looking at
Kat, you go first. You were first.
Oh, thanks, MJ. I think one of the other things that this looks like is developing a shared understanding of how we define social justice. So partnering with the Student Success Symposium to make sure that we have ongoing conversations. Sorry, I have a 4-week-old. That we have ongoing conversations that are true to what the aim of the Student Success Symposium was, to help elevate some of the anti-racist work that we're doing, to really embody and walk our talk. That is one of the biggest pieces of feedback that those of us who are sitting on the HLC and really looking at satisfaction data, right? For us, this transformation really looks like coming to a university-wide definition of what we mean by social justice, and making sure that we are comfortable when what we teach our students is turned back on us, when we have to look in that mirror, when we have to tell those truths, when we have to reckon with our complicity in these systems, even with the aims of being a social justice institution. We don't have a common understanding of that. We don't have a common understanding of what it means to belong. We don't even have a common understanding of what it means to interact with our communities. So, thinking about how we're defining that together, and then to speak into the question from Lisa that's in the chat of what does transformed curriculum look like, right? It's using these lenses to interrogate our practices, to interrogate those implicit biases, to interrogate the explicit biases that we have around assessment. And again, holding up this written word when not all of our students are going to be using some of these educational methods that we employ in their daily life, in their professions, right? We have a lot of students who are going on to do a mix of academic and other scholarly work that we need to honor. So being able to redefine those things and give ourselves some ability to evaluate our work honestly and have the ability to change, right? To see the possibility for growth in those spaces. Because otherwise we're just buying into the same stuff that we can't advance. We've always done it this way, right? And I think that's one thing that the TRHT pushes back against, is that we've always done it this way. Well, who has done it that way? Who had that power? Why did they have that power? Why did they make those choices? We made all this up. We can make up better stuff. We can incorporate more voices. And for me, that's kind of what we're looking at. And I'll go ahead and mute and pass to my colleague.
Thank you, Kat. I just want to say, I'm so appreciative of my colleagues lifting all this for all of us, and just want to add that the other piece about not having a clear identity when it comes to social justice in this institution, which sometimes surprises people. And when I see that, it's like maybe you're not connected with what's happening every day. If you haven't noticed that we're not speaking the same language when it comes to our mission and social justice. When we say in that 5-year plan, David, that we want to also bring the TRHT framework to basically every corner, every campus, every area, right? That's the big piece of this, right? So we still hear the stories of people who have been harmed and hurt in the process of becoming one university, right? And it's a process that is not there by any means yet, right? There's so much that still needs to happen in terms of communication, in terms of healing, in terms of coming together, in terms of speaking the same language, right? And having the same understanding of why we're here and where we're going and why we do what we are doing. And we are so hopeful, right? And engaged and committed that the work of the TRHT is also going to help us get to that place that we need to be, right, as an organization, because there's so much work to do, right? And one person cannot make all the decisions and all the work. Is just impossible. We need all the voices and all the participation and all the efforts together. So I know that we are short on time, so I'm gonna pass it on to Ahmad. Next.
This is heavy, but I thank you guys a great deal. Coretta Scott King was mentioned, and I just took some notes. That was on my mind in that moment. Coretta Scott King was mentioned, but what would her thoughts be now about nonviolence? And we were talking about barbershop talk, and once again, someone put up, I saw the word action. For me, or for peers that I deal with, the non-action of what happened from the optics standpoint of January 6th, and then we talked about, someone was mentioning about curriculum. How is that being explained for people who look like me, the brothers that are in question? We talk about social justice. Where's the justice in their eyes? And these are the things that, if they're not talked about and explained, the common person may not understand the depth of what's happening. They're just going on what they see. And what they see is they don't see action. So I just wanted to put that out there in reference to optics, action, and policy, and getting on the bandwagon of social justice, and then no policy changes in reference to George Floyd. Everybody knows with the black male and with the suffering of it. But if we look at what's happening in society, if we're looking at data in reference to news channels, the heterosexual black male, okay, is not being pushed, or you don't see their opportunities of growth or anything happening from a policy standpoint to embrace them even more. We see movements, as people mentioned earlier, but what is actually happening for them? I just wanted to share.
Feel your heart. Feel your heart. I think Shantae wrote earlier, we hear you and we see you, and we do. I think Rosa.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you're on mute.
I mute myself, meaning to unmute. Sorry, thank you, Armand. The comment I want to make was going to the topic of what kind of relationship we have external to university when you are doing this work, right? So this work, even though we are naming it right now TRHT, and it's getting like a cohesive framework for this. There are different efforts that have been happening for many years before, attempts or versions of efforts that have been like scattered, and then now it seems that they are going to start getting more intertwined, and which is fantastic. But I want to make to mention something that is interesting, food for thought. When you think about external partnerships and communities, which is 90% of my work, which is being in an institution that has this lack of precise definition or agreement of what does it mean social justice, to the point of CAT, and has been made, has been putting me constantly in a situation where what I have to do when dealing with community partners and building relationships is, and I put in the chat here the relationships that I've been building, is turning the tables and rather listen to the organizations, what is their social justice approach. Because the reason we deal with these organizations and the reason we build them in the case of undergraduate studies in LA, the reason for these relationships is to open learning opportunities for our students with them, right? Not from them with us, but from our students there. Therefore, we want our students to be exposed to different aspects or versions of what social justice looks like in the real world. So it's the organization's work where our students learn, and then we learn from them as well, right? So it's interesting. So I guess the point what I'm making is that it's a two-way street. So we define ourselves, and we can be defining ourselves and do whatever we want, and leadership is leaving, another leadership is coming, and we cannot be always dependent on our ability to be precise, but be very open to the influence of others in us. And that's what makes us attractive to these organizations. When we are like adaptable, when we are open, and when we build these relationships and listen to them as well. It's like applying the same circle methodology that you are talking about, but applying when we deal with them. It's listen to them, learn their story, their name, whatever it is, but think of the institution as a person. That is what I've been trying to do with this organization. So we want our students to have these learning opportunities there, and this is a 15-year-old work that we have been doing. So it's not overnight. The same is going to happen with the THRC. It's like a layer by layer, patience, and it's going to get there. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you so much for naming that, it is a symbiotic kind of experience, that not only are we pouring there, but they're pouring into us, and how do we value the gift of their wisdom and their knowledge. We've been talking a lot about social justice. I know everybody does it all over Antioch, but in TRHT, we've been talking about it. And so one of the aspects that we hope that week is to have kind of our own colloquium and start interrogating this idea about what is social justice for us, and what does it mean, and how do we listen to it and create our own framework. It's easy to say we are built on it, but what does it mean, and how does it show up, and how are we influenced, and how are we challenged by it? Because what it means for me today and what I am managing and navigating, it may shift, and that may challenge you, and how do we remain in community? And then where does that action piece come? And I think, Rosa, where it sits in my mind is we spent a lot of time as a group during our summer institute about cleaning up our own house. And so it doesn't mean that we have closed our doors to everyone externally, but we realize that we've got to do some unearthing and reconstructing and reimagining where we are as we talk about preparing people to go in the world and continue this amazing calling on their life, whatever that is, right? So And that's scary and it's big and large, but we believe it's something that is worth engaging and something that we collectively have the power and the wherewithal to do. Mally and then Karen.
I want to just
Oh, I'm so sorry, David. Go ahead.
interrupt briefly. We've gone way over our
We
time.
look at us. See, Clarence, we got messy.
Indeed, and
Yes, yes,
grateful for.
wonderful.
I'm sorry, and then we're grateful for that. And I know there's a couple of hands, but we need to wrap things up. A couple of announcements and so on.
Yeah, I just, sorry about that. I just wanted to kind of wrap that up, including what David said, but with this conversation in a lot of the questions about the solidity and cemented idea of a TRHT, and just remind us, as if we don't already know, or inform us if we don't already know. This idea was started as a hope based on a student researching the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and has turned into an entire intent to transform, right? And reconcile. And so I think it's important to understand there, as much as we're pushing to integrate, and it is to be integrated, we don't want to limit ourselves in defining in systems the same way we entered into the problem, right? It's not to say, this is TRHT, period. Here's this is TRHT, period. Here's this is our role. This is not your role, all of that. It was the idea of, what if there was this thing of applying a TRC model to American education. And now here we are, right? And then I closed that by saying, we used to always say, stay woke, I'm woke, this person's woke. And that's no longer a thing, right? Because you are never fully woke. There's no woke certificate. You don't earn a transformation certificate, right? In transforming, we are in the wake. And the purpose of the TRHT is that Antioch community and the community are committed to being in the wake. So that's all.
So we want to thank you, and we want to again thank Pia Alexander and Stephanie Helms Piggott and the other members of the TRHT Advisory Board for coming together with us today, helping us all get a better understanding of the work of that body and the work of Antioch more broadly in the coming years. So thank you for that. Hope you feel how much appreciation there is for the work that you're doing and for your presence here. And then just a quick reminder again, next week's Messy Conversation, 4 o'clock next Monday, on the Divine Nine, Emergence, Politics, and Culture of the Divine Nine. Clarence is he's put this one together and he'll be emceeing it with, I don't have the names of his guests in front of me, right?
It's Judge Rahuliman Kwander and Tony Odom. Judge Kwander is from the Omega Psi Phi, and Tony Odom is with Zeta Phi Zeta.
Thank you. Information I didn't have, so really appreciate that. So we hope that you are able to come back next Monday and join us for that conversation. Bring a friend. We got plenty of room. So, bring 2 or 3 friends. That would be nice. And we'll see you then. Thank you again for being here today.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.